Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. So on Saturday, I was playing around with Grok, which is X's chatbot. It's like Chat GPT. And I was just asking all these questions that I wanted to know just to see what it would come up with. And I found three really interesting things that I want to share with you. One has to do with temples, and then the other two has to do with President Nelson. And just one of these things, I can't believe that it went under my radar, especially since I'm actively looking for these things. It was a visitation that President Nelson had, and he talked about it in General Conference of all places. So I had to collect that for my spreadsheet. So yeah, just three quick things. The first one was this. I asked, the number of LDS temples announced do not seem to match the current ratio of number of church membership to temples. If all currently announced temples were suddenly in operation, how large would the church membership need to be to maintain the current ratio? Now, you may know, I've already done this myself. I did it manually. I have a spreadsheet called Temples Member Ratio. By the way, you can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. I always have to say that because I always get emails and comments asking me if people can access my spreadsheets. Yes, the description box of each video. So what I did on this, just a quick explanation. I wanted to, it didn't feel right that so many temples were being announced when, I also closely watch church membership and the growth rate, and there seemed to be a mismatch. Like more temples were being announced, and it didn't really match church growth. And so I wanted to know, well, if all those temples were all of a sudden in operation, and we wanted to keep the status quo, the ratio of members per temple, how large would the church need to be? And I came up with two numbers. One was based on the ratio of members of the church to temples in 2023, which was 92,771 members per temple. There were 186 temples. And so if we wanted to keep that ratio the same, the church would have to grow. I should zoom in. The church would have to grow to 34 million members. And this does take into account all the small temples, because these are all the temples as of 2023, and the majority of them are smaller temples. Some people have been like, well, you have to think about the square footage. No, it's already part of that. Okay, and then the other number, I looked at the overall ratio throughout church history, the average ratio throughout church history. Based on that number, which is higher, 127,000 per temple, if that was going to be the ratio, then the church would have to grow to 46.6 million worldwide. The church membership. So I wanted to see what Grok had to say. So it took the current church membership, divided it by the number of all temples announced in operation and under construction, and said, well, the ratio is 47,000, or that would be a ratio of 47,000 per temple. And then it was like, well, but that's not right. Let's do what you asked and let's see what the projection would be. And it came up with 32.7 million. So it basically just double checked my math, but it was kind of satisfying to see that. And I do think that there's going to be a large growth. I don't know if this is for immediately after the second coming with that large influx that Bradley R. Wilcox has talked about, or if this is something that's going to happen before the second coming. But I think the church is expecting really large growth. So that was the first thing. The next thing is, I wanted to see if there were any other times that President Nelson talked about the New Jerusalem being in Jackson County, and it came up with something that I hadn't found yet. This took me to an LDS Living article, a prophetic challenge from President Nelson that will help you draw Christ's power into your life. And this is an excerpt. This entire article is an excerpt from his book called Teachings of Russell M. Nelson. You can buy this from Deseret Book. It was published in 2018. And toward the end of their excerpt, they have this quote. And it talks about New Jerusalem and Jackson County. And so I put this on my spreadsheet called where is it? Back here. It's called Quotes, Common Misconceptions. It's currently on row 25. The topic is New Jerusalem. The misconception is New Jerusalem, the final center place or center stake, will be in Salt Lake City, not Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. There's people that think that the plan has changed, that we've been excused. And I specifically address the idea that we've been excused on row 24. And this has been talked about a lot by many different people. It's kind of similar to this, that the New Jerusalem is now in Salt Lake City, but it's a little bit different. So I already had this one quote from President Nelson from his book, Daily Joy, published in 2020, page 150. It says, you can read one evening about Jesus' responsibility as judge and know that the day will come when each of us will stand before him to be judged. Then read of his responsibility as the millennial Messiah and what that will mean when he will reign and rule from two world headquarters, from Jerusalem of old and from New Jerusalem in Jackson County. There it is. Then he will be King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And in this book that LDS Living is quoting from, Teachings of Russell M. Nelson, it has the exact same quote. But there is a little bit of additional information that I didn't have before. Number one, he has this scripture reference, 1 Timothy 6:15. That doesn't have to do with the New Jerusalem, but it's included in this book. And then it seems that he had said this before, because he references the Louisville, Kentucky Temple Dedication, Session 1 of March 19th, the year 2000. So what that means is that he originally said this in the year 2000, and then he repeated it in his new book, the 2018 book, Teachings of Russell M. Nelson, and then he included it again in a more recent book, Daily Joy, published in 2020. So anyway, I had to, even though it's the exact same quote, it just kind of shows you that he really does believe that the New Jerusalem is going to be in Jackson County. That's also what it says on the church website when you go to gospel topics and questions. And there's just so much more. You can just read through all these quotes. It's been repeated time and 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 time again. So anyway, let's move on to the third thing. So I asked Grok if President Nelson had any... I was looking for any visions or visitations that I didn't know of, and up until this point, I don't have any on my spreadsheet from President Nelson. There is one time that he shared this story of his, I think it was his great or maybe great-great-grandfather, who his father had passed away, but then he visited him from the other side of the veil. He had shared that story, and I have that here, but I didn't have anything from President Nelson himself, and so I was wondering if Grok could find something, and it did. So we're going to cover an experience that President Nelson himself had in May of 2015. All right. So at the bottom of the spreadsheet, I have a tally by year of the number of visions, visitations, dreams, near-death experiences, end-of-life, like visions that I've collected by decade. So this is going to be the second for the 2010s. And overall, so far I've collected 81 total accounts of visions and visitations. Okay, so for this, we're going to go directly to the source. It's the church website. This is his April 2016 General Conference talk called The Price of Priesthood Power. At this time, he was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And it's just at the very beginning of the talk. In my last conference message, I related my devastating experience many years ago when, as a heart surgeon, I was not able to save the lives of two little sisters. With permission of their father, I would like to say more about that family. Congenital heart disease afflicted 3 children born to Ruth and Jimmy Hatfield. Their first son, Jimmy Jr., died without a definitive diagnosis. I entered the picture when the parents sought help for their 2 daughters, Laurel Ann and her young sister, Gaylyn. I was heartbroken when both girls died following their operations. And he has a footnote for that, and it takes you to that previous talk that he gave that he mentioned in the previous General Conference, October 2015 General Conference, in a talk called A Plea to My Sisters. So let's go there just really quick. 58 years ago, I was asked to operate upon a little girl gravely ill from congenital heart disease. Her older brother had previously died of a similar condition. Her parents pleaded for help. I was not optimistic about the outcome, but vowed to do all in my power to save her life. Despite my best efforts, the child died. Later, the same parents brought another daughter to me, then just 16 months old, also born with a malformed heart. Again, at their request, I performed an operation. This child also died. This third heartbreaking loss in one family literally undid me. I went home grief-stricken. I threw myself upon our living room floor and cried all night long. Dancel stayed by my side, listening as I repeatedly declared that I would never perform another heart operation. Then, around 5 o'clock in the morning, Dancel looked at me and lovingly asked, "Are you finished crying? Then get dressed, go back to the lab, go to work. You need to learn more. If you quit now, others will have to painfully learn what you already know." Oh, how I needed my wife's vision, grit, and love. I went back to work and learned more. If it weren't for Dancel's inspired prodding, I would not have pursued open heart surgery and would not have been prepared to do the operation in 1972 that saved the life of President Spencer W. Kimball. And by the way, it was President Kimball that called President Nelson to the apostleship. Okay, so going back to the price of priesthood power. Understandably, Ruth and Jimmy were spiritually shattered. Over time, I learned they harbored lingering resentment towards me and the church. For almost 6 decades, I have been haunted by this situation and have grieved for the Hatfields. I tried several times to establish contact with them without success. And then here it is right here. Then, one night last May, so if you think about it, that's May of 2015. So that was just a few months before the October 2015 General Conference where he talked about this. So this was like fresh on his mind for the next 2 conferences. Then, one night last May, I was awakened by those 2 little girls from the other side of the veil. Though I did not see or hear them with my physical senses, I felt their presence. Spiritually, I heard their pleadings. Their message was brief and clear. "Brother Nelson, we are not sealed to anyone. Can you help us?" Soon thereafter, I learned that their mother had passed away, but their father and younger brother were still alive. Emboldened by the pleadings of Laurel Ann and Gay Lynn, I tried again to contact their father, who I learned was living with his son Sean. This time they were willing to meet with me. In June, I literally knelt in front of Jimmy, now 88 years old, and had a heart-to-heart talk with him. I spoke of his daughter's pleadings and told him, I should have highlighted that. I spoke of his daughter's pleadings because that's part of the vision. And told him I would be honored to perform sealing ordinances for his family. I also explained that it would take time and much effort on his and Sean's part to be ready and worthy to enter the temple, as neither of them had ever been endowed. The Spirit of the Lord was palpable throughout that meeting. And when Jimmy and Sean each accepted my offer, I was overjoyed. They worked diligently with their stake president, bishop, home teachers, and ward mission leader, as well with young missionaries and a senior missionary couple. And then, not long ago, in the Payson, Utah temple, I had the profound privilege of sealing Ruth to Jimmy and their 4 children to them. Wendy and I wept as we participated in that sublime experience. Many hearts were healed that day. And then there's the picture of it. So it's so amazing to me that, I mean, I watched this general conference. Of course I did. And I'm sure that you did too. Do you remember this story? If you remember this story, put it in the comments below. I wonder how many people remembered this story. I didn't. But this was, now he wasn't president of the church at the time, but he was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and he shared this in General Conference. You know, and I just wonder how many more experiences he may have had. He's talked about the fact, or at least Sister Nelson, Wendy Nelson, has talked about the fact that he receives pretty specific revelation at nighttime. I swear one time I saw someone quoting him that he said, wow, last night I had a special visitor. If you guys know where that quote is, please let me know. I feel like it was probably from like church news or something like that. But I swear I saw that somewhere. I've been desperately trying to find it ever since. But anyway, I'm sure that he's had more, especially since becoming president of the church. But anyway, so this is one of the more recent visitations that I have on my spreadsheet from 2015. I do have a few newer ones. Oh, wait, no, sorry. That's actually my second newest one. The newest one was President Holland's near-death experience that he talked about in the April General Conference of this year. And he's talked about it a couple other times since then. And I have all those accounts, or everything that he said, right here in this cell right here in column K. So yeah, wow, this is the second newest one. And yeah, okay, well, that's really neat. Okay, well, that's gonna be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.